made it.
Hey, it's Vas here from Aussie Aussie Playground and welcome to my review of the HaBao Hyper MT Sport Plus. Now this is a 1/8 scale 4-wheel drive brushless monster truck that is available as a ready to run or an almost ready to run where you add your own electrics and of course paint up the body. Now this truck is equipped with a 150 amp ESC, a 2000 kV brushless motor and is capable of running on either a 4S or 6S. However, you will need to get two 2S packs or two 3S packs to run them in series. Now, if you follow the channel for a while, you know that I did review the Offner Hyper MT a couple of years ago, and unfortunately that truck didn't fare too well. It had a bit of a weak chassis where it would buckle on pretty much just average jumps really, and also had a couple of issues. Now thankfully HaBao have made some improvements to this truck which will help its final score, but I still think that there are some things here that need to be improved upon and also some things that need to change. So without further ado, let's get into the scoring. For the electrics, I gave this one a 4 out of 5. Motor and ESC are brilliant in this truck. There's a lot of power in here, especially on 6S. Steering servo is pretty standard for a ready-to-run steering servo. Lacks a little bit of torque, is a bit slow, but overall it's pretty decent and does the job. However, the one thing I didn't like was the remote, and not just its ergonomic design, but also the fact that it runs 8 AA's, not 4. It is pretty well featured, but unfortunately it's just a very old platform, very old remote, and running on 8 AA's is not something that I would expect to see in 2016, 2017. So I think that needs to change from HaBao. Now moving on to drivetrain, I'm actually going to give this one a 3 out of 5. Reason being because my spur gear kind of disintegrated when I was running the truck, and fortunately this happened off camera when I was just mucking around with some friends. The biggest issue I have to say is the drive shafts, the standard drive shafts that this truck came with. After my first and second run, both on 4S and 6S, 3 out of my 4 drive shafts were all bent, and well, they were pretty much, you know, throwaway. One of them in particular was really bad, and it was rubbing on the A-arms and the shocks and everything every time it made a full rotation. So this is something that definitely needs to improve from HaBao, and I think a lot of that has to do with the suspension geometry, which we'll touch on as we go into handling. Now for handling, I gave this one a 3 out of 5. The shocks do not have enough travel. They bottom out before the truck does, and I think that I've proven my point here because 2 out of my 4 shocks don't look like they have any oil in them, and I think the reason why my tires are doing this is because I think the pistons may have blown, and that is purely because when you compress the truck, the shocks stop compressing before the truck hits the ground. This is a huge problem. This is a big problem and something that the original Offner had, and unfortunately it has been inherited with the HoBao version. For the most part, it should work fine. However, if you do what I've done and take it on some big jumps, the travel is just not enough. It needs to have longer shocks, I feel, and it's something that I'm going to be working on, and hopefully I'll be able to show you some better suspension tuning on this truck in the near future, so keep an eye out. I can't promise anything, but I am going to experiment a couple of different options and see how we go. Tires overall are not bad. These tires are actually, I think, a little bit better than the Offner version that was supplied. They haven't unglued from the wheels haven't broken, and I haven't stripped any screws, so overall the stock tires should serve you just fine. But of course, as you can see, I've got the Proline Max 38 3.8 inch Badlands on here, and these perform brilliantly. A lot of grip with these tires, but unfortunately they do balloon quite a bit. So the other thing to take into account is that the camber settings and toe settings on this truck were horrendous out of the box. I had to adjust everything. I think you may have seen it in the speed run. The camber was off. The truck was really difficult to keep straight in a straight line when I was trying to do my speed runs, and I noticed it as well when I was out driving. So it was something that it needs to be tuned pretty much straight out of the box. Adjust your camber and your toe so that you can get some proper handling out of the truck. Otherwise, it's going to be all over the place. Now, durability, I'm also going to give this one a 3 out of 5. The drive shaft, as I said, all buckled. Looks as though my shock caps, or sorry, my shock pistons, two of them have actually failed. And of course I had my spur gear that lost all its teeth. But aside from that, thankfully the chassis has held up. So HaBao definitely did some sort of improvement on the chassis, whether it was a different material or whether they use a slightly thicker material, I don't know, but definitely they've done something where the chassis doesn't bend. I did give this truck a pretty hard time before I installed the brace. The chassis brace that is supplied, or rather you can get for this truck, will help stiffen the chassis a little bit. I put mine on here obviously because HaBao sent it over to me as an insurance for the truck, but I didn't notice any bends or buckles on the chassis during my first round of testing. So kudos to HaBao for doing a good job there, because that was one of the biggest issues with the Hyper MT when that was released. Now, maintenance, as I said, you need to tune the truck up a little bit. So for the scoring here, I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5. Camber and toe adjustment needs to be done. The shocks are a little bit bouncy as well, so you might want to tune the oil on those. And of course you do need to install something like a wheelie bar, which you at the moment need to buy it as a separate item, but I would highly encourage HaBao to include the wheelie bar with this truck, because even on 4S it will pop wheelies quite easily. There's no center diff or slipper clutch in the truck. It has basically a transfer case for the gearing, and you pop wheelies very, very easily with this thing. So a wheelie bar is a definite must, as well as a slipper clutch. So you do need to add on a few things here and tune the truck up a little bit. And of course you have the twin vertical plate chassis, which is not really a twin vertical plate. It's kind of a U shape, but it has that look. So everything is wedged in there, and to access some certain components you will need to put in a little bit of time and be prepared to dismantle quite a lot of the truck. It's just the nature of the beast. Unfortunately, these styles of vehicles will always get us, an average score for maintenance, because when you want to access parts in them, it's always going to be a bit tricky and it's always going to be a bit time consuming. So that is my score for maintenance, which is a 3 out of 5. Now for part support, I'm actually going to give this one a 5 out of 5. Reason being because HaBao is actually a very well supported brand here in Australia, and although parts can be a little bit expensive, for the most part you will find parts on the shelf at local hobby shops without any problems at all. And as well, you will see that the Tower Hobbies have actually got HaBao parts in stock as well as the RCs. So parts shouldn't be too much of an issue. HaBao have been around for a long time, as have Offner, although Offner have all but disappeared now and HaBao have taken over. So parts for these things are pretty readily available. Even on eBay you'll find them. They're all over the place. So I have to give it full marks there. Now for value, I'm going to give this one a 3 out of 5, purely because you do need to upgrade some things. You do need to tune up the truck a bit, and you need to buy some extra bits and pieces, such as the wheelie bar. The extra thick drive shafts that I got for this one haven't given me any troubles at all, but of course you do need to dig into your pockets to buy those if you find that the stock ones bend on you. Now, bearing in mind, taking this with a grain of salt, that I did bend my drive shafts, but I did give the truck a hard time. So you feel free to go check out the running footage. I'll have links in the video description, and you can see for yourself the type of punishment that I've put this truck through. That gives you an idea, if you're going to drive like that, you're likely to be damaging some bits and pieces. As far as the plastics go though, I really don't have anything to complain about. Just like the Offner version, the plastics on this truck are solid as. I didn't even break a shock eyelid. I don't remember breaking any plastics on this. The truck is very, very durable in that regard. It's just the drive shafts, spur gear, and the fact that you need a wheelie bar. That's a bit of a problem. Also tuning the shocks, and the fact that you don't have enough travel on the shocks and they bottom out before the truck does, that also becomes a bit of an issue, especially if you're doing some big jumps like I did. So all of these things play a part in the overall scoring. So the total score for those of you playing at home is 24 out of a potential 35, which gives us a 68.5% as an overall score, which is almost a 7 out of 10. Now I will say, that's actually a pretty good score for this truck, and it's definitely a big improvement on the Offner version. However, I still feel that there's quite a bit of room here for HaBao to go back and tune some of these components, such as the shocks, perhaps include these heavier duty drive shafts in the truck as standard, and of course the wheelie bar is a definite must, as is the slipper clutch in fact. because not having any sort of slip, I think that contributed to the fact that my spur gear broke its teeth. You can get upgraded spur gears if you don't want to use a slipper clutch, so you can get CNC machined spur gears which are a lot more durable. But you know, what other components are going to fail on you? At the moment I have a diff which I believe may be my rear diff that's a little bit damaged, and I'll need to dig into it and see what happens. But again, I haven't really put that as far as the durability score, purely because I was being really silly with the truck, and I can't really blame it for doing that. I really put quite a lot of pressure on these components, and the fact that the diff went out on me, well, you know, given that the truck is worth, I think, about $530 US here in Australia, I think I've seen it as cheap as $750. So not a bad price point. It's definitely priced in the right market. It just needs to have a little bit better value, I feel, you know, and including some of these extras that you kind of have to buy and, you know, put in some extra money for. So that is my final score for the truck. If you enjoyed this review, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe if you're new. And as always, check out the video description for more links to the running videos of the truck, as well as a link to my Facebook page. I thank you all very much for watching, and I'll speak to you next time.